All right, look at this. We're dedicated. Guy is on his way home right now. Don't worry. He's either in a self-driving car or his wife is driving. He's not being unsafe. But we
That's
wanted
right.
to start on time because I never start on time. But we
This
have
was my
some
fault
guy on
today,
a
David.
mobile, some rando is joining the show. What's up?
This is my fault today. I had a noon lunch in the city. Ended up, you know, extending it. Did a walk around the tunnel tops, the Salesforce tunnel tops, which are awesome. Have you been up there, by the way?
Yes, you did it. Didn't you do a show from there the other day?
That was with the other tunnel tops. Those were the Golden Gate Bridge. This was
Oh,
the Salesforce
oh, the
downtown tunnel
Transbay
tops.
Center. Yeah,
The Transbay
the
Center.
rooftop park. Yeah, San Francisco's High Line. Have you been to the High Line in New York?
I've not been to the High Line in New York.
So what they did is they back in the day, Manhattan had an elevated railroad when it was more industrial for all the meat packing and everything that they had. They had the train to be able to ship it out. That obviously is no longer a thing as it's no longer industrial there. So they converted the elevated rail track to like parks, benches, and it's a big trail that you can take from the West Village all the way up to Hudson Yards. It's a cool thing in New York because everything is so urban there, so you get away a little bit. I find this to be a nicer version of that, the San Francisco version of that. You're up on what, 5 stories up? You can take the gondola up
Yeah,
right by the
four.
Salesforce Tower.
Oh,
4 stories,
okay.
yeah.
4 stories
Yeah.
to the and then they got beer, they got pizza. There was there was a yoga class going on when I walked up there. I mean, it was 2 o'clock on a Wednesday.
One of the best breakfast sandwiches in San Francisco is right off of that park. It's on top of it. It's called Andy Town Coffee Roasters. Next time you go
I've
back,
not done that. Okay.
yeah, you can have that. Anyway, Brandon Aiyuk, the meeting went down, and I'm sure people want to hear about that. We've already both talked about it in separate videos. There's, Mike texted me earlier today, and he said you're kind of mentioning it in your shows, but this is the one thing that people seem to be forgetting about. And it's not in any of the headlines. Occasionally it squeaks its way through to some of the content, but Brandon Aiyuk does not want to be traded. All these trade rumors keep on circulating. The guy himself has now repeatedly said that I don't think he's explicitly said, I don't want to be traded, but he keeps on saying, my priority, my first choice would be to play for the 49ers. And, I just think that's significant. The 49ers control everything here, obviously, but as far as Aiyuk being unhappy, happy, whatever, I know he's not thrilled right now, but still, he has repeated that he wants to play for the 49ers this next season. Whereas in the Deebo Samuel situation 2 years ago, that obviously wasn't the case as he formally requested a trade.
I had a few people ask me today on a stream I did this morning, David, does this situation feel worse than the Deebo situation? And I said, I don't think so. There's at least you're hearing from Brandon Aiyuk at several points. Now, sometimes it's something you don't want to hear, or sometimes it's a code, or sometimes it's a game. But he got on a plane and flew to them, or whoever them is. I don't know if Kyle was there, because he wants so badly. I think it's part of why it's so hard for him. It's clearly, somebody asked me to do a ranking today. I did a ranking. Who's this the worst for? Number 3, fans. I said me and the fans as a way to commiserate, but really from a content standpoint, not the worst for me or you. 2, John Lynch. He probably doesn't enjoy doing this every offseason, some version of this. And then 3, it is the worst for Aiyuk. And I know you have to set aside for a second that he's guaranteed to make at a minimum $14 million this year. And we're fighting over 28 versus 31 million, or 26 versus 29, or whatever the number is. But I do think it's mainly so challenging for him is, I don't know how he thought about it, but I do wonder if after watching the Deebo thing unfold, if he felt like, if I make it clear to them that this is where I want to be, then we can skip the step of the 2 or 3 months where they wait till the very end to do a deal with me, like it happened with Deebo, like it happened with Bosa. I wondered if he felt like, I know this is business, but let me do what nobody else ever does in this situation, which is say, I want to be here, and maybe that'll work. And it didn't work, or at least it hasn't worked.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though. Just looking at this from when I first learned that they were going to have a meeting on June 24th, I'm like, well, how could this possibly be productive, at least in the short
Yeah.
term. I don't think the very date of it tells you that the deadline pressure isn't near enough to bring two sides together. You need actual deadline pressure. You can't fake it. I think that Ayuk's feelings probably were so hurt based on what he's been saying on social media, some of the cryptic messages, the fact that it came out before this meeting that he was personally offended by the 49ers offers. It sounds like things just weren't in a good place from the human aspect, and that they needed to meet just to clear the air, just to get things in a place where maybe they could come back to the table and resume. And so even if it wasn't productive in the short term, even if it wasn't like, oh, we have a deal now that we've met, I think at the very least, this has paved the way for them to negotiate in a better manner once that deadline pressure does return. And that deadline pressure is going to be there in 3 or 4 weeks. And it might last throughout camp if they can't find a deal during camp. But that's when a deal can realistically be achieved. I think that the personal human aspect of this was the purpose of this meeting. That's my read on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I thought it was interesting because you did a video about it. I haven't watched it yet, but the Pelissero report that the meeting went well, and I don't know. I don't know if I believe that, because maybe it went well from the Niners perspective. I don't know that Brandon came out of it. I wonder. And the reason is that Instagram post that he made, was after the meeting.
But I don't even know what he meant with that comment. That was the thing. It's like, well, obviously they're listening to offers. It was just, it seems to me, and I think maybe you were mentioning this in one of your videos, it seems to me he's fighting a battle with social media, even more so than he's fighting a battle with the 49ers in negotiations.
Well, that's what I said today.
My advice was, dude, just get off of social media. And that's not just my advice. Nick Bosa said something very similar about his negotiation last year. And then somebody asked him what his advice for Brandon Aiyuk is, and he said something to that regard. George Kittle has repeated similar things. Fred Warner went through this. Deebo Samuel said it was stressful. I mean, it's tough enough to be in a high-stakes contract negotiation. That's why you hire an agent, so he can handle most of it. But if you're starting to fight battles that we have to fight in our jobs, as media members, we know it's tough. Social media is a war zone, right? If you're starting to do that as a player, it's not going to be productive, because the negotiation is going to be decided by the actual market and deadline pressure, all these things. It's not going to be decided by what you post on some Instagram, some random JPA football Instagram, right? So I just don't think that that's doing anybody any favors. It's a distraction at the end of the day that not have anything to do with actual numbers here.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a distraction that he thought, initially it's like, oh, I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to mess with everybody. I like messing with people. But then you can't get off the train.
Yeah.
How do you stop? How do you go, because there's always someone's always sending you a message, or someone's always, and then as it's happening, Justin Jefferson gets paid a lot of money. And maybe you thought, I went back and watched and I played some of it in my thing this morning, the press conference that Kyle and John did the Thursday night of the first round of the NFL draft. And if you watch Lynch in that, there's a lot going on, right? They're taking phone calls. There's a lot of things happening in that moment. But Lynch kind of says, he doesn't say we're about to get a deal done, but he says, like, oh, you know what? It was not that press conference. It was the minicamp press conference. He's like, oh, we're kind of like, we're making progress. You just kind of feel like Lynch is a little optimistic there. And we haven't seen him speak since, so we don't know how he feels. But I
think we're losing you, Guy. I think he's home, though. Look, he's frozen there up on the screen.
Getting done.
You were frozen for a bit there up on the screen.
Well, good. I'm almost to my computer.
Good. Awesome. It's going to be a race to your computer. Do you want me to keep your camera on, or do you want me to shut it off?
Sure. You can keep it on.
All right, cool. This is fun. Let's watch a guy running into his house, and we're going to get to see his little setup. This is neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, your setup is right there on the ground floor. All right. Got it.
Yeah. Well, I came in through the side door.
Nice. So we get to see him turn everything on. This is like a behind the scenes look at how the YouTube magic happens. Lighting's looking on point. Nice.
Lighting's there. Let me get to this. Oh, you know what? Actually, I already have it loaded up somewhere.
I could see the hat in the background. Now I'm recognizing where you are. Yeah, there's the line of hats. Cool. You're gonna go from phone handheld to like 4K here in a second. Although I will say the phone looks great. I think that there was a little pause there as it was switching to your Wi-Fi.
Oh, you're right. That's exactly
And
what
because
happened.
it's gotten crystal clear ever since you switched to the Wi-Fi. All right, camera booted up. You got the Camlink 4K. There you go. All right, we're gonna make the switch. We could have you on simultaneously. Hold on, look at this. This is picture in picture. There's two of you. Two different angles. That's awesome. All right, I'm gonna remove you from the phone. There, you remove yourself. Love it. Mic, audio check.
Check.
You're good.
All right.
Awesome. He's got.
This is all because
TV
I'm
here.
late and David's got somewhere to be. So we thought better to start with me in the car than to.
Hey, you've done a show from, like I said, Tunnel Tops. I love walking around doing shows around the city. I think it's the most photogenic place on earth to be, and especially it's the 49ers city. So you know, you could connect a lot of. There's so much cool Niners stuff and history in the city, different bars, and it's always nice to get out of the studio. It's always nice to be in the studio too if you want to put some stuff up on the screen, which we can. By the way, we mentioned Brock Purdy in the headline, or at least I did on my side of this. And speaking of Brock, Matt Barrows and I wrote our State of the 49ers quarterback position piece the other day, and we delved into some of the advanced numbers, and the comparisons for Brock Purdy are. Oops, I took you off the screen. There you go. The comparisons for Brock Purdy are really, really fascinating because, I mean, you could literally stack him up against the Hall of Fame names from the past 20 years, and his numbers from the 2023 season stack up favorably. We're talking Manning from 2004, Brady from 2007, Drew Brees from 2009, Aaron Rodgers from 2011, Matt Ryan from 2016, which is one that people like to talk about a lot since Kyle Shanahan was also his coach, and Patrick Mahomes' best season statistically was that 2018 season, his first season as the starter of the Chiefs. But anyway, adjusted net yards per attempt, DVOA, success rate, QBR. Brock Purdy, I mean, the QBR is a little bit lower, and there still is meat left on the bone. He can still improve. Nobody's saying that he's Manning, Brady, or Breeze yet, but the numbers are very, very promising. So it was cool to look at this. And anyway, the title of the video, and one of the things I wanted to talk about, was the rapport that Brock Purdy has with Brandon Aiyuk. And I think that makes re-signing Brandon Aiyuk more of a priority for the 49ers guy, because these two guys, you know, Purdy and Aiyuk have really developed a connection. And the last thing you want to do is take away a quarterback's most productive receiver right before you're about to make a massive financial commitment to that QB.
Yeah, you know, I was looking in the car at PFF, and just, you know, the quarterback rating when he's throwing to Brandon Aiyuk is significantly higher than when he's throwing to any other receiver on the team. Like, you know, Juice is one, then it's Aiyuk, then it's Kittle. Like Ross Dwelly was in there like fourth. Obviously, I didn't have any minimums on the filter. But, you know, the question is just like, well, is that a function of the position that Aiyuk plays, or is there something really going on between the two of them? And I think on a fundamental level, the thing that's going on between the two of them is a receiver that is as precise as Aiyuk is the best possible thing for Brock, because Brock has to make a decision when to throw earlier than Justin Herbert has to make that decision, right? So it's very important that if you're going to be a receiver for him, and we saw this issue, I've mentioned this a few times, so I hate to belabor the point, but we saw this like with Ray McLeod in the playoffs. Like, you got to be where you're supposed to be, because Brock's skill is that he has enough guts and his brain processes quickly enough that he can throw it before it's open, which is one of the great. You got to do it before, you know, you got to be able to see it before it's obvious to everybody else.
Yeah, you have to use the force. Turn off the targeting computer.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, Brock has to be able to really trust a receiver. And that's part of this thing. You said something yesterday, I think, that I thought was such an obvious but insightful part of this, which is that for Aiyuk, if he does not sign a contract and plays on his 5th-year option, now he's in a contract year. And so when people are like, oh, hold out the first week, like really put the pressure on him. If he doesn't have a contract signed, then anything he does that hurts the 49ers also hurts himself.
Bad. Yeah.
Really bad.
His value has never been higher than it is right now. So he puts a lot of pressure on himself. If, it's betting on himself if he doesn't sign a contract, really. Because there's an offer out there. There's an offer out there right now that will make Brandon Aiyuk much richer than he currently is. The 49ers are, with that offer, are saying, hey, we'd like to reward you a year early. You're still under contract. But that really anchors it, right? Like, and that's why the Jefferson deal, I think, was so surprising to us, because Minnesota was in a similar position with Justin Jefferson entering the 5th-year option. He's had 4 1,000-yard seasons, so the impetus, the demand to reward him was even greater than with Brandon Aiyuk. But he's had 2, and you do want to find a way to cash in and secure him for the long term sooner rather than later for obvious reasons, because that price over time could go up. And you also want to reward a guy who's been a good culture setter for your team. But at the same time, you are going out of your way, technically, if you're a team, and you're doing the guy a favor since he's already under contract. So it's an interesting balance. Anybody who reaches...
And I have to interrupt you, David. I wouldn't quite, to me, I wouldn't characterize it as doing him a favor.
How would you characterize it?
Well, I mean, you are doing a deal that you have to sign him at some point if you want to keep him on your team.
Yep.
And you want to do it in a way sometimes sooner rather than later. Next year's going to be a harder year. Like, let's say you don't sign him this year and he plays on the 5th-year option. And he plays as well as you think he's capable of playing. Well, now what's he cost next year?
Yeah, then the price actually does go up. Yeah, I mean, you're benefiting as the team as well by being able to control how the cash flows against the salary cap. If it's just a rigid 5th-year option at $14.1 million and then a rigid franchise tag at 21 or 22 million, that money has to hit the cap, 100% of it in each of those respective years. But if you can find a way to a long-term deal now, you could actually fidget with the money, play Tetris with it, and you could lower his cap hit to $8 million this year, carry over the difference. That's $6 million extra versus his $14 million cap hit right now. And, in that way you could better fit the roster around Brock Purdy even after he signs a contract. So the team absolutely benefits as well. I think that if they both sign on the dotted line, they're both doing each other a favor. The team is doing Aiyuk a favor, and Aiyuk is doing the team a favor. That's the definition of a good deal, right? And that gives both sides incentive to sign, but it has to come in at the right price, and they haven't agreed on that right price yet.
There's also there is such a risk for him. There's just such a risk for him in playing this year out. If he's willing to do it, then he puts himself in a position to suddenly have the leverage, right? Even though the team will have the 5th-year the franchise tag option, Niners have no history of playing a player in it. Most teams don't have a history of playing a player in a franchise tag. It's not good for them. It's not good for the player. It's not good financially for them. It's not good. But there's a risk in playing it out. There's just obvious. You get hurt. What if it turns out Ricky Pearsall is ready to make it a really immediate impact, and all of a sudden it changes the way they look at things? Now if he's willing to risk all that stuff, then it's possible that next year he has the leverage. But the system is just not set up for the player to start with the leverage with a very small exception of players. And Nick Bosa, it so happens one of his teammates is on the exception list.
Yes. And it's a little rough for Aiyuk to come the year after Bosa and the year before Brock Purdy, who's going to be on an exception list as well if he continues performing at the level that we just illustrated with some of those numbers from 2023. But yeah, that's another thing to talk about. A lot of people want to draw comparisons, and it's fair, between this and the Bosa situation and the ones before that. But especially between this and the Bosa situation, there's a compare and contrast going on. I mean, these are two guys who in successive years are in line to earn a lot of money from the 49ers. But with Bosa, I thought that the leverage, the playing field was tilted in his favor. he and Brian Ayrault is Bosa's agent. They're negotiating downhill. And I have to say that Ryan Williams and Brandon Aiyuk, they're negotiating uphill against the 49ers.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't have Nick Bosa for week 1 and beyond last year, everything splinters, obliterates. You can't say Aiyuk is a great piece and he helps the 49ers. You can't say the same thing about him. They've got other weapons on this offense that can keep this team afloat until Aiyuk is absolutely forced to report to the team. And that would be week 8, I think. He doesn't get the accrued year if he doesn't show up by then. So there's a hard deadline on Brandon Aiyuk, and it would shock me, absolutely shock me if he bypassed that and just stayed home for the whole season. So the 49ers know this, and they know that they can live without Aiyuk until he does have to report. They weren't sure that they could live without Nick Bosa until the moment that he had to report last season, which changed the dynamics. Downhill for Nick Bosa, uphill for Brandon Aiyuk.
And Bosa, remember, is a guy that stepped into the league with leverage. He, from the moment he became a pro, he had leverage and used his leverage.
Yeah.
Here, let me just give you I pulled up the PFF, the QB rating when these players are targeted. Juice 138, Aiyuk 124, Kittle 123.9, so almost identical to Aiyuk. Ross Dwelly 116. And Chris Conley 113. There's your top 5. No, McCaffrey 113, Charlie Warner 111, Debo 107.5, Juwan Jennings 102.9, Ronnie Bell 101.9. Now, obviously, vastly different number of targets here, but Aiyuk, number 2, 124. Next receiver, 8th, 107.5. Debo. So, I mean, there is a chemistry there. And the question the Niners, I think, have to answer for themselves also, David, is like, does Brock get less valuable if Brandon Aiyuk's not on the team?
Yeah. I think it's a symbiotic thing. I want to find one of these XY charts that really illustrates, I think, what you just talked about. It's obvious. I mean, you wouldn't have had Joe Montana without Jerry Rice, and you wouldn't have had Jerry Rice without Joe Montana, right? You can look at every Marvin Harrison, Peyton Manning too. Yeah. Every single quarterback receiver duo in the history of the sport that we've considered great has been great because it's a tandem thing. I mean, it's a harmonious thing, and there's always all these debates about who gets more credit. Well, these are two very, very different jobs and skill sets, quarterback and receiver, that have to work together. And I think that's why we can't view it. Also, the 49ers can't view it as something like, oh, well, you just plug Ricky Pearsall in for Brandon Aiyuk and you'll have similar results in very little time. It's not that simple in this game. And that's why you want to stockpile good players, because in a sport with a lot of injuries, it gives you more options down the stretch of these marathon seasons. But 2, it also gives you more options over the long haul and quarterbacks. And that's, one thing, that's what made Brady so great. The staying power. He was in the league for 2 decades, and he was able to work with a cast that frequently changed around him with the New England Patriots. So you have to give him his roses for that. And I know Joe Montana had staying power too. He worked with different guys over time. But the guys you do work with is important. And especially for a young quarterback like Brock Purdy, he's 24. He's got to have some stability around him. Once Purdy is at age 27, 28, 29, maybe he has a couple MVPs under his belt at that point, that's when you could start talking about, okay, maybe the supporting and cast around him can rotate a little bit more and he'll be fine. He could be more like a Tom Brady. But early in his career, I think it's really, really important to facilitate that stability around Brock Purdy. And I think Brandon Aiyuk definitely represents that stability.
Let me ask you a question then.
Mm-hmm.
What are the chances that Ricky Pearsall turns into a Brandon Aiyuk? What are the odds? And I was thinking about it today, and I said, well, 2 out of 10, that sounds reasonable, optimistic, but reasonable. But if 2 out of 10 is 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 10 is 20%. When you say 20%, that seems too high to me. There's a 20% chance that Ricky Pearsall turns out to be as good as Brandon Aiyuk. When I say you draft 10 Ricky Pearsalls, 2 of them turn out to be as good as Brandon Aiyuk, that seems, even though it's the same percentage, that seems a little less ridiculous. But like, what's the chance you think the Niners have Brandon Aiyuk 2.0 and Ricky Pearsall?
Well, I think that the hit rate on these first round picks is around that 20%, right? So, I mean, Aiyuk has panned out, and he panned out right away, which is he didn't turn into what he is now right away. It took some growing pains, especially in that 2021 season early on. He wasn't getting a lot of targets and really had to find his way into the rotation. But 2020, that was the year of the hurdle against Philadelphia in that Sunday night game. He was on pace for a 1,000-yard season until he got hurt against the Cowboys. I think that was in week 12. So Aiyuk was an electric talent immediately. You were able to tell that, I mean, and that's why I think the start to 2021 was so frustrating for him and for people around the 49ers. But he figured it out, 1,000-yard season in 22 and 2023. So anyway, 25% is probably a fair number. That being said, I think we're going to have a good idea sooner than people expect, because everybody acts like it took Aiyuk several years to show promise. That's not the case. He showed promise very, very soon.
Right.
That hurdle play against Philly was like 4 weeks into his NFL career.
And it's one of his career highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So if I could find, before I have to run here in a little bit, if I could find this this graphic, it would be very clutch. I'm downloading this document right now where I think it resides. Brock Purdy's wideouts this year.
What did you say this is? What are you looking up?
It's from this new startup. People might have noticed I'm using it in a lot of my videos and on social media. It's called Field Vision, based out of Portland.
Okay.
And I have it here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. They've got really, really cool graphics that shows. This is Brock Purdy's receiver profile. So x-axis, we got expected points added per play whenever a certain receiver's targeted, and y-axis is the success rate. Look at Kyle Juszczyk. Shout out to him, by the way, up here.
Yeah.
Very high success rate when he's targeted. Obviously, a smaller sample with Juszczyk, but Aiyuk's got a huge sample. That's why his dot's so big. High average depth of target, 14.4 yards, and he's an upper right guy. And the highest expected points added per play when targeted. Kittle's also off the charts. That's really good. That's the best of any tight end. So this graph right here, I think, is a good indication of how important Brandon Aiyuk is to Brock Purdy.
I do think that it just gives me another opportunity to share my juice take for people that haven't heard it, which is every year there's somebody in Niners camp. They were like, oh, people think, could this be Jack Coletto 2 years ago? I like Jack Coletto. Could this be the juice replacement? I think when you really watch Kyle Juszczyk, as many people do, it's like, oh yeah, I could find a guy that could do that one thing, but can you find a guy that can do the 8 things? It's a lot easier in theory than in practice to find Kyle Juszczyk number 2.
Yeah, and I mean the staying power has been impressive, and I think he's got to get his roses here. The pay cut that he took, I'm not necessarily sure that the 49ers had full leverage in that situation. I think that if Kyle Juszczyk would have stood up, not been a team player about it, and said, no, I'm not taking a pay cut me, I think that he would have called the 49ers bluff. I think, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, he understood the big picture. He understood that they're trying to, that was a preemptive move so that they could keep this sustainable, and they do need to make cuts in certain spots. And he did take the pay cut. It was a big time team move from Kyle Juszczyk, who's been a big time. He's the longest tenured 49er now. He and Kittle joined in 2017, but Kittle will tell you that Juszczyk was a free agent signee that year, so he was aboard a couple months before George was drafted. Hard to believe.
He's he's not in a single income home, and he may not be the highest earner in his house. I'm not exactly sure, but Kristen has become a mogul, so I don't know if that factors in. Being on the Niners is pretty good for business. It's a high profile place to be. And I don't say that sarcastically at all. It's, George Kittle's an awesome player. George Kittle's a big personality. Would he have a national ad campaign for a glasses company if you were the tight end for the Cardinals? I don't know.
We talked the same thing about the Aiyuk situation, I think, last week, right? When we talked about brand value of a franchise, and it was the 49ers versus Jacksonville, right? Or something like that. So yeah, there is great inherent value with playing for a franchise that is one of the it franchises of the league. Right now.
So here's what to watch for then, David.
Yeah.
We need a list of the Niners' biggest sponsors. And then we need to figure out which one becomes a Brandon Aiyuk endorsement deal. I mean, Purdy makes no money. All of a sudden, Toyota has a car parked outside of Levi Stadium. Brock partner. Zenny Glasses, Niners
Zenny's
partner
huge.
first.
Every
George.
time I'm on BART, I see George Kittle with his Zenny glasses.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of public transportation advertisements in the Bay Area.
I think you could obviously Levi's would be an obvious one for Aiyuk. United Airlines, although he's got the private jets.
Yeah. I'm working on my 1K status this year, by the way.
I know. I saw you the other day for 8 seconds on YouTube in San Francisco, and then the next thing I knew you were back in Nashville. I think you came just for I'm on the Waymo waiting list, by the way. So if you know anybody, Lombardi, let them know Haberman wants in on Waymo.
Every single time I do one of those videos, I get like 3 emails from people wanting a reference code to get onto Waymo.
Oh, is there a reference code?
I don't know. So I need to check, but that's become a tradition for me. It started with me trying to save time. I'm like, gosh, I want to do a live, but it takes 35 minutes to cross town to go swim. Sunset's about to hit. So like, I need to leave now. Okay, let's just do the live in the car. And it kind of reminded me of you doing your live today. You're time efficient with it. I loved it.
Yeah. It's not having to drive yourself is a major luxury.
It's huge. Yeah.
I'm trying to see. I mean, Pepsi, obviously they're a big Niners sponsor. Yahoo. Is that still the lounge? What's the lounge called now? It used to be the BNY Mellon.
Well, there's one that's like Foxconn Industrial.
Oh, yeah. That's Foxconn Industrial. That's Aiyuk right there. What is that, like corporate communications or something? Probably, right? Like phone systems and communication systems.
It's half of the, it reminds me of the billboards when you're going through downtown San Francisco. It's become kind of a viral meme. Nobody understands what the billboards are.
They're all B2B companies.
It's like you guys literally took this city out of an episode of Silicon Valley.
Yeah. What's the big one that I see every time? What's that company? Their stock just popped off the other day. What is it?
I don't know. I tried
a big 3D billboard. There's multiple AI billboards. Yeah, you can't be another city in America with billboards in downtown like San Francisco.
I'm bitter that they replaced the Coca-Cola billboard. Remember that was I thought that was like some kind of historically preserved landmark, but I guess everybody has his price, and they were able to take that one down. I mean, it was the coolest thing ever. You're driving up onto the Bay Bridge, or you're coming into the city and you see the marquee, the big Coca-Cola bottle. That was, you remember that, right? That was probably taken down 8-9 years ago at this point. Now it's just a bunch of lame tech billboards. And, it's funny because that show Silicon Valley, they actually brought consultants out to live in the Bay Area and help write the script.
Yeah.
And it's painful because it's so close to home, so many of those scenes. But anyway, the 49ers have tapped into that with their move to Santa Clara and all those sponsorships.
NVIDIA. That's not the billboard I was thinking of, but somebody just said NVIDIA. That'll be Aiyuk's. I'm half kidding, but I'm kind of serious. If this deal gets done and it's not, and it won't be record-breaking money, just watch. Aiyuk's going to end up with a Niners affiliated endorsement deal. I'm not saying anything's happening. I'm just saying Eddie D would be proud
draft picks
of the synergy. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Eddie D's involved. I'm just saying Foxconn Industrial and Brandon Aiyuk are going to have a relationship.
The Foxconn Industrial Internet Lounge, brought to you by Brandon Aiyuk.
This is Brandon Aiyuk for Foxconn Industrial.
Yeah. I mean, and if teams started, I don't know what the exact salary cap rules are. I'm sure that they would have to tread carefully. I'm sure that the NFL's group of lawyers have made sure that situations like that are covered. But players are free to be sponsored, and at some point, I don't think you can stop natural connections from happening like that.
If there happens to be a sponsor player mixer and you guys hit it off,
so be it.
Who are we to stop that?
It's funny because now college football, we don't have any of these discussions in college anymore. Any of the Reggie Bush discussions right, at USC. Yeah. But maybe we'll be entering an era with the salary cap in the NFL where we're starting to talk about improprieties and who gets docked a draft pick. I mean, already this offseason, the 49ers ran into a couple situations where there was draft pick controversy. They obviously lost one due to the accounting error. Right. And then there was the whole comp pick controversy where one of their comp picks was lower than they thought it would be. The Bills were upset for the same reason. They didn't agree with the way that the NFL calculated it. But
well, and we may see the Kirk Cousins situation. I don't think is resolved. Right, that could be a draft pick in 2025
with the tampering.
Yeah,
they also tampered with Charlie Werner, the Falcons. I don't think anybody would have noticed the Charlie Werner tampering if not for Kirk Cousins. It was kind of under that same umbrella, but 49ers there probably a little upset that the Falcons, I guess they met with Charlie Werner or they contacted him directly during the Monday to Wednesday legal tampering period before they were supposed to.
All right. I know you got to go, but somebody said Foxconn builds the Apple iPhone in China. And somebody else said somebody is chasing the white rabbit. See, the fact that people think I'm I'm half serious, but the fact that people think I'm insane with that take makes me makes me more emboldened. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for making it work for a guy on a mobile. I appreciate that.
It's good. I'm about to take a lift right now, but I think your wife was.
You want to continue the show?
Yeah, I was about to say if Margot was driving me, I would continue the show. But this guy's kind of look at me weird if I get into the lift. And
all right,
yeah, so it's good. He's pulling in 2 minutes, so we've got 90 seconds to kind of wrap it up with our thoughts. But when are you leaving to Portugal? By the way,
Portugal actually is what they're calling it these days.
They changed the pronunciation.
Yeah, when I show up, Portugal.
Oh, Portugal! I get it. I thought that you were like speaking Portuguese or something. But Portugal, yeah.
Lisboa apparently is. We call it Lisbon. They call it Lisboa.
Lisboa, yeah.
Lisboa. Sunday. When are you going to London?
I think Tuesday or Wednesday. I think I got another week here. We're going to New York first for a night because United Airlines 1K status. I can't possibly not take them. So.
See, I'm not doing that.
So we're flying to New York. We're going to spend the night there. We're going to go out to dinner, see some friends, and then we're going to hop on the direct flight from New York. So
that's awesome.
San Francisco's United hub, but Nashville's not. So that's the problem.
Gotcha. I didn't stick with United for this flight because I got a direct on Portuguese Airlines.
Yeah, but
ask me how that is later.
No, but you're good because that's TAP Air Portugal, right? They're their Star Alliance. So you'll get your United points and.
Oh, I gotta look at you, man.
Yeah. You got to strategically plan. Another good one is Turkish Airlines. If you ever fly them,
I have. Yeah.
Economy is like full 4-course meal, even on a 2-hour flight kind of experience.
So you're saying I can connect United with my? Well, anyway, we can discuss this later.
Yes. Yeah. We'll talk about it off air. People are probably really annoyed right now. Anyway, Brandon Aiyuk and Brock Purdy have rapport. If you think that Guy and I have good rapport, you could leave that in the comment section. If you think it's terrible,
cheesy. All right, we're 1-1 now. my Portugal guy joke and that I think we're even. That's good. That was good.
If it's not good, then we're not getting an extension. But I think
we're in charge. That's the good news.
Yeah. We don't have to hold out. All right, cool. Thanks, Guy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. David.
See ya.